yesterday I had an idea. Actually, that's a lie. I was at Thomann. I was talking to Chris Barocci, and he had the Lion on the table, Lion by UA, which is a plexi simulator, Marshall-y kind of a pedal with a super lead, a super bass, and then a modified plexi, getting you the brown sound from the Van Halen man. And we're talking about, I said, you know what would be the killer setup? I said, you should make that video. Turning the speaker sim off in the Lion, which is brilliant. So this by itself is an amazing pedal. And going into a Fryette power station into a cab, I said, that probably will give you the ultimate Marshall setup without actually ever having an amp, except for the power station. We get to that. I actually had several people write to me, people that are playing in big-ass bands, saying, is the Lion really that good? It is that good. So I once reviewed the power station and the power station 100, which is over there in my rack. That's the 50. And I put a Helix into it. Cab simulation off, Helix into it, into a real cab. And it sounded fantastically better than only with simulations. So I had a hunch that would work. And then my brain kept going and going. I was like thinking, so let me explain to you what the elements are. The Lion is a full amp simulator, preamp, power amp, and then speaker modeling, no IRs. It is fantastic. The power station is a tube power amp and attenuator. So you can throw your 100-watt actual plexi onto this, completely reduce its power into heat. Then you have a line signal out of the speaker, out of your plexi, and then you amplify it again into the speaker, but with a tube power amp. And the benefit of this, when you're using it as an attenuator, and I think it is the premier attenuator on the market, is that your amp is seeing the reactive load. So your amp actually is seeing exactly what a speaker would do. You can even tune it here to what kind of speaker your amp sees. So your amp is super happy and reacts the way it's supposed to react. But your speaker is actually also reacting back and forth with tubes because there are tubes in here. In this case, I think they are 6L6s. I think. So this is the attenuator. It has an effects loop, so whatever you put into that effects loop will therefore be behind your amp that's fully cranked and go into the speaker. So if you're putting a delay in the effects loop, it will come out of your speaker because it is amplifying it into the speaker. That is really cool, so you can actually put time-based effects behind your real amps. That makes it the attenuator to get, but it doesn't have speaker simulation. It just has a line out. So you would have to get a speaker simulator, and I said in my aux stump video, right here, that now with the aux being $1,500 and more pricey, which is pretty ridiculous, get this, kind of spend the same amount of money than you would spend on an aux, but then you have the best attenuator on the market with a tube power amp, and you can even make quiet amps louder, and then use the aux stump, which has all the digital side of the aux, and put that behind it, and that's the best of both worlds. Now, if we could put a killer amp sound into this, and I think we would stay under $2,000 without the speaker, wouldn't that be amazing? So what I did is, I'm going into the Lion, on one side out into the power station, and that's it. I turned the speaker simulation off by clicking till there's no more lights on the speaker side, and now it's completely off. Then that goes into the speaker. All your amps you want, one preset, and I put boost on the left switch. So the way I have it right now is this switches presets and this switches boost on off. So in a live situation, you'd have your amp and then boost on and off, and then another amp boost on and off that technically gives you 4 sounds. That doesn't have MIDI, that's a big drawback, but that gets you quite a bit. What we're talking about here, by the way, is very important. I'm saying this is a killer setup, probably one of the best setups you can play or you can invest in. But for rock and roll, for blues, for clean stuff, this is not a metal setup because a crank plexi doesn't react as precisely as a metal amp would. So this is a rock and roll setup. We're not dealing with loads of different effects, but we're dealing with effects, and we get into this. Then the right side of the line is going directly into the aux stomp. I don't have to go into the power station and then out of the power station. Why? I have another side. It's going into the left side of the aux stomp, and the left side of the aux stomp out is going into my audio interface, which means at the same time that I'm using the cab, I can grab a DI sound. And then I was thinking, and the DI sound, by the way, would have compressor, delay, and reverb on it. Wouldn't that be cool? But then on stage, you wouldn't have those effects unless you have them in the monitor. But then why have the cab? So I was thinking the aux has stereo ins and outs. So the right side of the aux stomp is going into the effects loop of the power station. And here's what I did. I routed the SM57. This is a kind of a compromise because usually you have two mics and the room in the aux stomp. I routed the SM57 fully to the left. I routed the room fully to the left. So on the right side of the aux stomp, there's no SM57, no room. On the right side, I turned to DI and fully panned it to the right, meaning that what's going out of the effects loop here is not being affected by any mic simulation in here. So it's just going through unaffected except for the effects, which are now also in my cab. So with this setup, you can have 3 of the most amazing plexis you can have with one preset and boost. And here I did effects on the right, meaning when you turn this on, you turn all the effects on and off. So I could have it clean like this, but clean going into the computer and clean going into the cab because of the way I wired it and routed it digitally in the aux. And you turn this on, all of a sudden you got whatever effects you wanted. Now, the way I would set it up for a live situation, there is no tap tempo. Again, we're talking rock and roll. You want some ambience, you want some delay for your, or maybe a chorus, which you can also do in there for certain parts, but there isn't super precise setting up or tap tempoing. But what you could do is do the same setup with the same cab, the same mic on all 6 rigs, but change the effects settings. So when you're changing the rigs, what happens is you're not changing the cab, that stays the same, but your effect settings change. So your delay times, your feedback, whether it's a chorus or a flanger, whether you have reverb on and off. So you'd have, let's say, 6 different effect settings to use in your songs, but you would switch in between songs because, well, technically, you can switch between rigs here. So you could switch, if you wanted to, in the middle of a song to a different preset right here. That would get you different effects if you really needed it, which realistically in rock and roll you do not. I'm powering the pedals with a Chox 4 and a power bank. So there's literally one power cable connected to this. I'm using a hum because I had some hum problems. And this beautiful rev cap that I got with my beautiful new D40, which is over there, video coming. Price-wise, I think we're looking at like 1,100 something, 430, that's 860. So realistically, without the Chox and without the cap, these 3 elements are running you about $2,000. Now, what can you get for $2,000? You can get good amps. Can you get the highest level of plexis like the Friedmans, Bogners, Metropolis, the fine stuff? Or old ones? Probably not. But then you have an amp, and that requires being loud. You can't go DI. It's not very practical to carry around. You might not want to take it to gigs because it gets damaged. This setup, I dare to say, would give you the sounds you need in a ridiculous, loud, rock and roll manner, but so much more. Some programmability. UA level, 1176 compression, delay, and reverb. forget about these. Once you have the setup and you actually have amps, you own the best attenuator on the market. So you can make your real amps quieter if you wanted that. You can make your real amps quieter with this, do mic and cap simulation with this. So I could take any of my amps, put it into this behind it, and record. If you're spending $2,000 on an amp, you can't do any of this. If you just take the Lion, have loads of fun recording with it by itself. So that you've already have then. You want to use any kind of preamp you have into the aux stomp, you can do that. You can attenuate your real amp. You could use this only for effects. There are a lot of possibilities with these three elements to be used: DI with cap, attenuate amp, cap simulate an amp. So you're getting an incredibly flexible setup that I dare to say does not have any compromise in tone. Usually when you use a modeler, compromise. The compromise here is preset switchability. There is no MIDI. Using a looper switcher, no point. It is a rather small setup that you could put in a bag, even a backpack if you wanted to. Go to a gig if there's a cap. You're running some of the best Plexi sounds. And here's my argument for that. The Lion actually has sounds that do rival some of the best, oldest, curated Plexis, because James Santiago and the team at UA went out of their way to get their hands on the best ones, model every single component in there, and then combine those components to be like the real amp. There is no digital fizz in the top end. This is not what you're used to when you play a modeler. I had my friend Patrick here yesterday. We put the rig together, and he owns Bogner, Friedman, Actual Marshalls, Metropolis. He's a Plexi fanatic. He's a rock and roll, and he owns all of that shit. He also has an aux, he has a power station. He spent a lot of money on ridiculous gear. And so he knows what these things sound like in the room. We put this together, and he was standing there like, yep, that'll do. Plus, bam, here's another preset, which he can't do with this rig, because he'll have to get to a different amp or completely change the settings. Now, what I'm going to show you in the clips that are coming now is it being mic'd with a cheap T-Bone mic that I was reviewing anyway. Careful, there had some clipping on there. That mic was not the best choice, but it still works. And then DI sounds. Later in the clip, I'm going to the Brown setting, and I'm showing you how just with the volume on the Heritage, I can get that high gain sound to be clean. Then go to the bridge pickup, hit the boost, hit the effects, and have the screaming lead. So with one setting and volume, you can have clean, a kick-ass rhythm, then kick in the boost and effects, and then you have a kick-ass lead. So if you know what you're doing, presets are not that important. I wish there was MIDI. Really, this would make this the amazing rig of a lifetime. I know it doesn't look cool. I know it's not a Marshall on a 412. But I would dare you to find another setup this compact that you then can take the three elements off, and all three elements are highly usable in a studio situation. Take the Lion away, put your amp there, have attenuation and speaker simulation. Work with the Lion alone. Perfect. Again, we're always talking about Plexis. We're always talking about rock and roll. Don't even use these. Use that to make your amp more playable at home. For the investment of $2,000, you have an incredibly flexible setup that you can take live with you and freaking rock. It's not going to look very cool on stage. A head looks better, and you probably wouldn't want the blue cap anyway. I love that thing. But that sounded phenomenal in the room, and I just wanted to share that with you. Now we're going to go 2 clips after all this talking, and enjoy. And then, of course, after that, animals at the end.
taking the day. There's an oddity in my way. I don't seem to care for what I